Welcome to the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery.
All right. So many of you wanted us to take a deep dive into what makes a truly great leader.
Yeah, seems like everyone's looking for that magic formula.
So we cracked open Reinventing Leadership by Bennis and Robert Townsend.
Ah, a classic.
It really is. But we're not just going to summarize the whole thing, We're pulling out the most valuable pieces, the stuff that you can actually use.
The good stuff.
Exactly. So are you ready to rethink what leadership really means?
No, I am. This book is different. It's not your typical leadership fluff.
I know you need.
It's like, imagine you're sitting in a room with Bennis.
Okay.
This legendary leadership scholar, right? And Robert Townsend, who is this CEO known for shaking things up.
Oh, I like that.
And they're just going back and forth.
They're having a real conversation.
Yeah. They're challenging all those old school ideas about leadership.
And getting straight to the point.
Exactly.
So one of the first things that really jumped out at me was their take on managers versus leaders.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
They're not the same thing.
Definitely not. See, managers, they love control, order, predictability.
Right, keep everything running smoothly.
Exactly. But leaders, they're all about acknowledging people, creating new possibilities, empowering others.
It's almost like they're speaking different languages.
It's like they're on different wavelengths.
Yeah. So how do I even know if my workplace is more manager heavy?
Right.
Or if there's that leadership spark,
Well, Bennis and Townsend, they have these questions, and they're really insightful.
Oh, I think a good question.
So they ask, do you feel like you actually belong in your organization? Are rewards actually based on, how well you do? And do you feel pride in the work your organization does?
It's almost like a leadership litmus test.
It is. Think about it in your own workplace.
Okay, but let's get to the really juicy stuff, the essential leadership traits.
Okay, let's do it.
Because some of them, they really surprised me.
Yeah, they're not afraid to get into the nitty-gritty. One of them is personal ambition under control.
Interesting.
Doesn't mean you shouldn't have ambition. It's more like making sure your ambition serves something bigger than just yourself.
So it's not just about climbing the ladder for the sake of climbing.
Exactly. Imagine a politician who's obsessed with becoming president, but has no idea what they'd actually do with that power.
Ambition without direction is kind of scary.
It can be dangerous.
So it's ambition is the fuel, but you need a good driver and a clear roadmap.
You got it. And they also talk about intelligence and articulation.
Makes sense. Leaders need to be smart.
Right. But they also have to be able to communicate their ideas clearly. No more jargon-filled speeches.
Oh, I've definitely sat through a few of those.
We all have. They need to be able to inspire people through their words.
That's a real skill.
It is. Now, what about this concept of servant leadership?
Oh, that one really stood out to me.
Yeah, it's a powerful idea. Basically, Bennis and Townsend are saying that true leaders, they put their people first.
They're not just bosses.
Nope. They're there to support their team, make sure they have the resources to succeed, and give them the freedom to do their best work.
So instead of giving orders, it's more about empowering others.
Exactly. They give an example of a leader who steps in to resolve a conflict that's holding the team back.
Oh, I've seen that happen.
It's about clearing the path so the team can focus on what they're good at.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, what about this objectivity thing?
Okay, yeah.
Does that mean leaders have to be like robots?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's about being able to detach from your personal feelings when you're making decisions.
So not letting your emotions cloud your judgment.
Exactly. They say it's like having a mission statement that acts like a compass, keeping you on track even when things get tough.
So they're not emotionless, but they can't let their ego call the shots.
Precisely. Now, have you ever had a boss who is really good at shielding their team from unnecessary burdens?
Oh, yeah. I've definitely worked for people like that.
Well, Bennis and Townsend have a name for that. Toughness as protection. They describe leaders who protect their team from distractions, criticism, all that stuff that can get in the way of doing good work.
It's like they create this safe space where you can focus and be creative.
Exactly. And that ties into inclusivity.
Right, making sure everyone feels like they're part of the team.
It's about being transparent, sharing information, making sure everyone has access to opportunities. They argue that when everyone's in the loop, they're more invested in the success of the organization.
And that leads to encouraging reflective back talk.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Isn't that kind of encouraging people to argue with you?
It might sound that way, but it's really about creating a culture where people feel comfortable giving honest feedback, even if it's not what you want to hear.
So it's about being open to different perspectives.
Exactly. They even talk about this guy, Lee Iacocca, who was known for his strong personality. He used to appoint someone at meetings to be the contrarian.
Oh, I like that.
Their job was to take the opposite viewpoint. It's like saying, bring on the criticism, because that can lead to better decisions.
Wow, that takes guts.
It does. And it's not just about receiving feedback. It's about actively seeking it out. That's why mentoring is so important.
Right, learning from others.
And not just from people who are more experienced than you. Leaders should also be open to learning from the people they're mentoring.
It's a two-way street.
It is a continuous cycle of learning and growth.
It's humbling to think that even at the top, there's always more to learn.
Exactly. But speaking of learning, how can a leader be both patient and urgent at the same time?
Oh, yeah. They talk about that patience and urgency thing.
Yeah, it's one of those leadership paradoxes, right?
Definitely.
They argue that you need to be patient when you're developing people, nurturing their growth. But at the same time, you need a sense of urgency about achieving your goals.
So you can't rush the process, but you also can't just sit around and wait for things to happen.
They use this analogy of a gardener, patiently tending to their plants, giving them the right conditions to thrive.
I like that.
But they also have a clear vision of the harvest they're working towards.
Right. They're not just randomly planting seeds and hoping for the best.
Exactly. So you need that balance, that long-term vision with the drive to make progress now.
It's about being both strategic and tactical.
You got it. Okay, so we left off talk about how the world of work is changing so fast.
And how leaders need to adapt, right?
Exactly. Bennis and Townsend say we need to shift away from that old COP paradigm.
COP.
Yeah, it stands for control, order, predict.
Oh, like the old command control style.
Exactly. They say we need to move towards something they call the ACE paradigm.
ACE. All right, I like that already.
Acknowledge, create, and empower. Much more dynamic, right?
Definitely. But what does that actually look like in practice? Like, how do you lead with ACE instead of just trying to control everything?
Well, it starts with a real shift in mindset. Like, acknowledgement means you actually recognize and appreciate what people are doing.
So not just taking their contributions for granted.
Exactly. You celebrate their successes and make sure they feel valued.
So it's like you create this positive feedback loop where people feel seen, and that makes them want to do their best work.
You got it. And then the create part is about fostering initiative.
Giving people the freedom to come up with their own ideas.
Yeah. Instead of micromanaging every step, you encourage people to take ownership, come up with innovative solutions.
So you're saying it's okay to let people experiment a little, even if it means they might make some mistakes along the way.
Exactly. It's all about creating a safe space for that experimentation.
Because mistakes can be valuable learning experiences, right?
Absolutely. And that brings us to empowerment, which we touched on earlier.
Giving people the tools and resources they need to succeed.
And the freedom to use them.
Yeah.
Bennis and Townsend actually give some great examples of companies that have embraced this ACE approach.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, they talk about Pacific Bell, which created these self-managed teams.
Interesting.
They were responsible for the communication systems for some really big events, like the Democratic National Convention and the Olympics.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure.
I know, right? But the thing is, those teams, they thrived outside of that traditional hierarchy.
That's counterintuitive.
It is. But they were able to respond to customer needs really quickly, solve problems in creative ways, and deliver amazing results.
So stepping back and giving people more autonomy can actually lead to greater progress.
That's what Bennis and Townsend are arguing. It's about trusting people to do their best work.
But how do you build that kind of empowerment into an organization's culture? Like, how do you make sure everyone feels empowered?
Well, it starts at the top.
Leaders have to set the example.
Exactly. Leaders need to embody those ACE qualities, but they also have to be willing to unlearn some of those old command and control habits.
Especially those leaders who've been successful in more traditional hierarchical structures, right?
Yeah, it can be hard to let go of that control when you're used to calling all the shots.
Like they have to trust that their team can handle it.
Exactly. It's a real mindset shift, moving from I'm in charge to we're in this together.
From control to collaboration.
That's it. They actually give some pretty practical advice on how to do that.
I'm all ears.
Like focusing on listening more than speaking.
Makes sense.
Really valuing diverse perspectives, collaborating more, being open to feedback, all that good stuff.
So it's about becoming a more adaptable and responsive leader, someone who can navigate complexity.
And help others do the same. But what about when things go wrong?
Oh, yeah, crises. How do great leaders deal with those curveballs?
You know, Bennis and Townsend don't shy away from the tough stuff. They actually argue that crises, while definitely challenging, can be amazing opportunities for growth.
It's like that saying, pressure makes diamonds.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
But how do you actually turn a crisis into a diamond?
Yeah, most people just panic, right?
Yeah, they do. But Bennis and Townsend share some amazing stories of leaders who not only navigated crises successfully, but came out even stronger.
Okay, give me an example.
Think of Jim Burke, the CEO of Johnson & Johnson, during the whole Tylenol crisis.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was huge.
Someone had tampered with Tylenol capsules, and people were dying. It could have destroyed the company.
It seemed like there was no good answer.
Exactly. But Burke, he didn't panic.
Okay, so what did he do?
He recalled millions of bottles of Tylenol, launched this massive public relations campaign focused on transparency and safety, and ultimately he regained the public's trust.
It's like a textbook example of how a leader's response to a crisis can define their legacy.
It really is. And they also highlight another crucial thing.
What's that?
Taking care of your people. They use this example of William Parrott, who was the managing partner of Deloitte & Touche's New York office during the World Trade Center bombing.
Oh gosh, that must have been so difficult.
It was. Amidst all that chaos and uncertainty, Parrott's top priority was making sure his employees were safe.
Just knowing someone has your back in a situation like that must be so powerful.
Absolutely. It's about showing genuine care and concern, which builds loyalty and helps the organization weather the storm.
Okay, so we've got taking care of your people.
Right. And Bennis and Townsend also emphasize learning from crises.
Learning from mistakes, yeah.
Not just your own mistakes, but also learning from what happened to others. Like, analyze what went wrong, figure out why it happened, and come up with strategies to prevent it from happening again.
It's like turning those tough experiences into valuable lessons.
Exactly. And they make this interesting point about storytelling, especially during a crisis.
Oh, how so?
Well, they share this example of Jan Carlson, who is the CEO of Scandinavian Airlines.
Okay.
He had this huge challenge turning around this struggling airline.
Yeah. How do you motivate people when everything seems so bleak?
Carlson understood the power of storytelling. He had this vision of making SAS one of the best airlines in the world, and he communicated that vision through these really compelling narratives.
So it's not just about dry facts and figures.
Nope, it's about connecting with people on an emotional level.
And showing them how their work contributes to the bigger picture.
Right. He also focused on customer service, training employees to go above and beyond to make passengers happy.
So even in tough times, a strong vision can inspire people.
And that's why leaders need to be able to see the whole system.
Not just their little corner of it.
Exactly. They have to understand how their decisions impact the entire organization. Now, let's talk about something that a lot of people are uncomfortable with. Mistakes.
Everyone makes them.
We do. But Bennis and Townsend argue that mistakes are actually essential for growth.
It's like you can't learn if you're too afraid to fail.
They say leaders need to create a culture where people feel safe to experiment, take risks, and yes, even make mistakes.
Because if you're constantly worried about making a mistake, you're never going to try anything new.
You'll never innovate.
Right. But doesn't that lead to chaos? Like if everyone's just running around making mistakes all the time?
It's about calculated risks. And it's about learning from those mistakes. They emphasize admitting mistakes quickly and openly.
So no sweeping things under the rug.
Exactly. Own up to it, figure out what went wrong, and move on.
That takes a lot of humility.
It does. They even suggest that leaders should sometimes publicly take the blame for mistakes, even if they weren't directly their fault.
Really? Why would they do that?
It sends a powerful message to your team. It says, we're all in this together.
It builds trust and loyalty.
Exactly. And speaking of building trust, they have some interesting things to say about how leaders should handle feedback.
Especially critical feedback.
Oh yeah, that can be tough to hear.
It can. But they argue that leaders should actively seek out feedback, even the critical kind.
They use this term reflective backtalk.
I like that.
It's about creating an environment where people feel comfortable sharing their honest thoughts, even if those thoughts are different from yours.
So being open to different perspectives, even if they challenge your own ideas.
Exactly. They even recommend having a devil's advocate at meetings.
Someone whose job is to disagree.
Yeah, someone who's specifically there to offer a contrary viewpoint. It can lead to much better decision-making.
It's like deliberately inviting constructive criticism. Okay, so you've got to be open to feedback.
Right. And you know what else Bennis and Townsend talk about?
What's that?
Having fun.
Oh, I like where this is going.
They argue that work shouldn't be a grind. It should be engaging, stimulating, even enjoyable.
I think we've all had those jobs where it felt like pulling teeth to go to work every day.
We have. But Bennis and Townsend say leaders have a responsibility to create a work environment where people are actually excited to come to work.
Where they feel energized and motivated.
Exactly. They give examples of leaders who use humor and playfulness.
Like they don't take themselves too seriously.
Right. And they celebrate successes, big and small.
Making sure people feel appreciated.
Exactly. It's all about creating a positive experience for everyone.
Okay, so we've talked about empowering your team, navigating crises, even having fun.
But leadership isn't just about leading your own team, right? It's also about developing other leaders.
That's a great point. You can't do everything yourself.
Exactly. Bennis and Townsend argue that great leaders, they don't just lead, they create more leaders.
So it's like their legacy.
It is. They see it as a responsibility to cultivate the next generation of leaders.
So how do they suggest doing that?
Well, they emphasize mentoring, giving people opportunities to learn from those who've been there before.
So it's about sharing your knowledge and experience.
Exactly. And creating challenging assignments that stretch people's abilities, help them develop new skills.
Pushing them outside their comfort zone a little.
Right. And giving them regular feedback, both positive and constructive.
So they know what they're doing well and where they can improve.
Exactly. It's all about helping people reach their full potential as leaders.
And celebrating their successes along the way, right?
Absolutely. Their achievements are a reflection of your leadership.
Now, they also have some pretty specific advice on how to be an effective mentor.
Oh, yeah. They get into the nitty-gritty.
Like, what kind of things do they suggest?
Well, first, you have to identify those people who have the potential to be great leaders.
The ones who are eager to learn, willing to take on challenges.
Exactly. The ones who already show those leadership qualities we've been talking about.
Okay, so you found your potential mentees. What's next?
Well, you have to be clear about your expectations. Like, what are the goals of this mentoring relationship? What do you hope to achieve?
So everyone's on the same page.
Right. And of course, you have to be available to answer questions, offer guidance, help them work through challenges.
It's about being a supportive presence.
Exactly. They also suggest letting your mentee observe you in action.
So they can see how you handle different situations.
Right. And sharing your own experiences, both the good and the bad.
That's important. Showing them that everyone makes mistakes, even experienced leaders.
Exactly. And it's about creating a safe space for them to ask questions, challenge your assumptions.
It's a two-way street, right? You can learn from them too.
Absolutely. Now, I love this idea. Bennis and Townsend suggest having your mentee mentor someone else.
Oh, that's interesting, like paying it forward.
It is. Because when you teach something, it really helps you understand it better yourself.
It's like taking your learning to the next level.
Exactly. It creates this ripple effect of leadership development.
Where each generation mentors the next.
Exactly. It's about building a legacy of leadership.
Now, one of the things that really resonated with me was their emphasis on humility.
Yeah, they talk a lot about that.
They argue that truly great leaders aren't afraid to admit they don't know everything.
They're always open to learning from others.
And they're constantly seeking out new knowledge and perspectives.
It's about being a lifelong learner.
Always curious, always growing.
And they say leadership isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels empowered to contribute their best ideas.
So it's about fostering that culture of shared learning and growth.
You got it. And you know what else is really important?
That's that.
Having a clear vision.
Oh, yeah. Bennis and Townsend talk a lot about that.
They argue that a strong vision, when it's communicated effectively, can be incredibly powerful.
It's like that North Star that guides the whole organization.
They tell this great story about Bob Haas, the CEO of Levi Strauss.
Okay, what happened?
Well, his PR team had come up with this really polished vision statement.
I bet it was full of jargon.
Probably. But Haas, he rejected it. He wanted something more authentic.
Something that people could really connect with.
Exactly. So he involved his employees in creating a new vision statement, one that truly reflected the company's values and aspirations.
So it wasn't just a top-down mandate, it was a collaborative effort.
Exactly. And that's so important because when people feel like they've been part of creating the vision, they're much more likely to buy into it.
And to work hard to make it a reality.
Exactly. But it's not enough just to have that vision.
You have to communicate it effectively.
Absolutely. Leaders need to use storytelling, compelling examples, consistent actions.
So it's not just about words, it's about actions too.
It's about showing people how their everyday work contributes to that bigger vision.
Giving them a roadmap to the future.
You got it. We've covered so much in this section, from navigating change and overcoming crises to building a culture of learning and feedback, even having fun at work, and, of course, the importance of developing other leaders. But we're not done yet.
There's still more to uncover.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into reinventing leadership.
I can't believe how much we've packed into this conversation already.
Me neither. But we've got more good stuff to share. We've talked about leading through crises, empowering your team, and even creating a fun work environment.
All those external things.
Right. But now I want to focus on the leader themselves.
Okay.
Bennis and Townsend have this concept they call positive self-regard.
Oh, that's a good one.
It sounds kind of touchy-feely, but I think it's really important.
It is. It's not about ego or being arrogant. It's more about this, grounded sense of self-awareness that actually makes you a better leader.
So you're saying it's about knowing your strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah. And being open to feedback, even when it's tough to hear. Bennis and Townsend really stress this point.
Okay, like how?
Well, they say leaders need to understand their own limitations, and they need to be actively looking for ways to improve.
So it's not about being perfect.
Not at all. It's about being willing to learn and grow. And they even talk about knowing when it's time to step aside, to let someone else lead.
Knowing when to pass the baton.
Exactly. And, they share this really interesting statistic from Bennis's research.
Oh, I love a good statistic. Lay it on me.
Okay, so Bennis found that 38 out of 40 successful Fortune 500 CEOs, they were all happily married to their first spouses.
Wow, that's pretty surprising.
It is. And they attribute that to their ability to receive reflective back talk at home.
So even these high-powered CEOs had someone in their lives who could give them honest feedback.
Exactly. It shows that being open to different perspectives isn't just good for business, it's good for life in general.
I love that. It's like, no matter how successful you are, you still have blind spots.
We all do. And creating that culture of feedback within an organization, that's where the magic happens.
Okay, so you've got to be open to feedback, but you also need a strong vision, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bennis and Townsend say a compelling vision is essential for inspiring and guiding an organization. But it can't just be some empty slogan.
It has to be real.
Exactly. They talk about the difference between a genuine vision and one that's just for show.
Okay, give me an example.
Well, they tell this story about Bob Haas, the CEO of Levi Strauss.
Oh, yeah, I think I've heard of him.
So his PR team had created this really polished vision statement for the company.
I bet it was full of corporate jargon.
Probably. But Haas, he rejected it. He wanted something more authentic, something that really captured the company's values.
So he went for substance over style.
Exactly. He actually involved his employees in the process of creating a new vision statement.
Smart move. When people feel like they've had a say, they're much more likely to be invested.
Exactly. But having a vision isn't enough. You also have to communicate it effectively.
Make it come alive for people.
Exactly. Use storytelling, compelling examples, and most importantly, your actions have to align with that vision.
Walk the talk.
Exactly. So as we wrap up our deep dive into reinventing leadership, I want to leave you with this.
Okay, hit me with it.
Think about all the things we've discussed. Embracing change, empowering your team, building trust, seeking feedback, having a strong vision. What's one small step you can take today to become a better leader?
Maybe it's reaching out to someone for mentorship.
Or setting aside time for reflection.
Or just being more intentional about listening to your team.
Whatever it is, remember that leadership isn't about your title or your position. It's about inspiring others to achieve great things, to make a positive impact on the world. And that's something we can all strive for.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you learned something new about what it really means to be a great leader. We'll see you next time.
See you next time on the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. Until next time.
See you then.